Hello, and thanks for joining me for this presentation today, which is integral versus non-integral citations. So what we'll talk about first, of course, is what are these? What are integral and non-integral citations? How do they differ? What are the differences between them? I'll give you some details on that and a few examples. Then we'll talk about reporting verbs and voice, which are important concepts related to citations in this case. And we'll do a summary at the end, talking about what we've gone through, and hopefully it'll all be clear by that point. So let's get started with the basic differences. So non-integral citations are not part of the sentence, hence the name. They're not integrated into the sentence. So as you can see here, this is the non-integral citation, and it's at the end. Integral citations are integrated into the sentence. Here, the name of the author of the source is subject of this sentence, so it's integrated into this sentence. Some more details on non-integral citations. As I said, they're not part of the sentence, so they can be subjects, objects, or complements. They are fully enclosed in parentheses. You find them in brackets there. They can come at the end of clauses or at the end of sentences. I'll give you an example of both in a moment. They neutrally indicate information. Okay, so you don't need to imply your own stance. You simply write something that is a paraphrase or a direct quote from the source. Right. So an example of a non-integral citation here at the end of a sentence, similar to the first example, right there at the end enclosed in parentheses. And here's an example at the end of a clause. So it doesn't have to be quite at the end of the sentence. That's the end of a clause. And here we have your own comment, the writer's comment. So overall population growth has slowed in developed countries over the past 50 years. That information came from Fenn, a point which will be elaborated on further below. That's your own comment, the writer's comment. Moving on to integral citations. So they are part of the sentence grammar. They may be subjects, objects, or part of prepositional phrases. And I'll show you a few examples in a moment. Only the date is enclosed in parentheses, not the name of the author or the organization from where the source came. They can come at various positions in the sentence, right? They can be at the beginning, at the end, around the middle. They can imply the writer's stance on source information. So this is an important one. We'll go into more detail on that in a moment. So here is an example of an integral citation as subject Fenn. Here is the subject, shows that da 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 da. Here's an example as an object. This theory provided Fenn 2016 with a basis for predicting population rates. Here Fenn is the object in the sentence. Fenn here is part of the prepositional phrase, according to Fenn 2016. So these are just some typical examples of how integral citations can be used as different grammatical parts. Okay, now you see from the first integral citation here that we have the verb shows. That's called a reporting verb. Okay, and you can use reporting verbs in two ways. The first way is they can imply the position of you, the writer, regarding the source. So what I mean here is if you, again, you say Fenn shows something, this implies that you agree. You take it for granted that what follows the reporting verb is true. Okay, so if you use shows as a reporting verb, it implies that you agree with the source. If you use demonstrates, same thing. You imply that you agree with the source. If you say states, or if you use states or describes as a reporting verb, you may or may not agree with the writer. There's no implied position there. It's fairly neutral. Here, if you use argues or claims, it suggests that you may question what the source is arguing or claiming, because an argument is something that is generally challenged. as our claims. Okay, so as I said, the reporting verb here can imply your position in relation to the author of the source that you are citing. Now, the reporting verb also has some relevance to the certainty of the claim of the original author. So it's quite strong to say that Fenn shows something, and it's quite weak to say that Fenn or any other author speculates about something. So be aware of how the author themselves characterizes their claim. They may characterize it neutrally as they're stating something or claiming something, or they may characterize it in a weak way. They're speculating or suggesting, they're not sure, or they might characterize it very strongly, in which case you can use show or demonstrate for that as well. Okay, and this brings us to voice. So we've been talking about the way in which you, the writer, talk about the author of the source that you're using. And the part where you comment on the source is your voice. And the part where you quote the source or paraphrase the source is their voice. But with an integral citation, you may also have what's called mixed voice. So I'll talk about separate voice first, where, as I've said, you have the source voice and the writer's voice. So population growth effects are dependent on societal structures. That's the source's voice. This clearly has implications for how such growth should be managed in different countries. That's your voice, the writer's voice. You're making a comment on something that was said in the source. And you've used a non-integral citation for the source here. Using the integral citation with a reporting verb like shows, that implies agreement. We can characterize this as using mixed voice. And the reason for that is that your agreement, your position is mixed with the position of the author that you're citing, right? So Weeks shows something, suggests that you agree with Weeks, so there's a mixture of your position and their position. We call that mixed voice then, okay? And the second part of this, and this clearly has implications, etc., that's just your voice, the writer's voice. Okay, so I hope that part is clear. You want to have a balance in terms of voice. So a well-balanced academic text has a mixture of voices. You will find, though, that this to a degree depends on the type of text. So in descriptive texts, you will use mostly non-integral citations. Okay, in discursive texts, you'll use more integral citations. Why do you think this might be? Well, the reason is that discursive texts by nature are more argumentative because they involve taking a position on something, taking a stance, and arguing for it strongly. Descriptive texts are more about describing facts in a neutral type way, right? So because position is more important in discursive texts, you will likely use more integral citations to take a position on what your source is claiming. You'll use more mixed voice, and you'll use these reporting verbs here to imply your position regarding the source. Okay, I hope that's reasonably clear. It's just a quick run through of integral and non-integral citations with a few very brief comments on reporting verbs and voice. What we've learned were there are two types of citations. These are integral and non-integral. Integral citations are part of the sentence grammar. Non-integral citations are not part of the sentence grammar. Integral citations allow for establishing the level of agreement with a source. Very important. They also allow for establishing the strength of a source's claim. And the citation types can and should be varied to balance the use of voice in a text. Finally, discursive texts tend to need more integral citations than descriptive texts because here your position on sources' claims is more important. Okay, so that's it really. Here are some references that I've used, and thank you very much for listening. Really appreciate that. If you liked the video, please do subscribe and click the notification button. Thank you again, and talk to you again the next time. Cheers.